My name is Megan Calloway. I'm 36 years old, and 8 weeks ago, my marriage ended because my husband thought I would back down when he said, "If you can't handle my parents living in our house, we're done." I said, "Understood." I don't think he really heard that word when I said it, not the way I meant it. The house came first. I bought it 5 years ago, 3 full years before I ever took his last name. 3 bedrooms, a small office, a single-car garage, and a little patch of yard that never quite looks like the Pinterest photos. The mortgage has always come out of my account. The title is in my name alone. It was the first truly adult thing I ever did that felt like mine. That detail, as it turns out, is very important. When I met Daniel, he's 33, he used to joke that I was the responsible one. I had a house, a retirement account, and a slightly boring car that always started on the first try. He had charm, a decent job in operations at a manufacturing company, and parents who still called him Danny in public. In the early days, those parents were just stories. His mom, who sent him home with Tupperware containers. His dad, who was terrible with authority, always threatening to retire early because no manager tells me what to do. It was almost cute then. Almost. They moved in 6 months ago. It was supposed to be temporary. His dad retired early after what Daniel vaguely described as workplace drama. They needed, in his words, a couple months to figure things out, find an apartment, get their finances sorted, breathe. "We have the space," Daniel said, sitting at my kitchen table with his hands around a mug of coffee like he was asking me for a kidney. "It's just for a little while. They're freaking out, Meg." I stared at the pattern in the wood grain instead of his eyes. 2 months, I said finally. Max. He nodded too quickly. 2 months, promise. I remember that now, because 8 weeks later there was sawdust on my weights, and his father was drinking my beer on my couch while my mother-in-law rearranged my kitchen drawers like she was auditioning for a home organization show. The first week they were quiet guests. They brought groceries, they cooked dinner, they thanked me repeatedly for opening my home. His mom, Linda, insisted on doing the dishes. His dad, Carl, called me kiddo and asked where he could set up a small corner for his projects. I should have asked for a definition of small. By week 3, my kitchen was no longer my kitchen. One Saturday, I came downstairs to make coffee and stood there blinking at the chaos. My spices, alphabetized, labeled, years in the making, were in a cardboard box on the floor. Half of them were missing. "Morning," Linda chirped, cheerfully scraping something into the trash. "Where are my spices?" My voice came out flatter than I intended. She glanced over her shoulder. "Oh, those. You had so many. Most were expired. And nobody needs 3 different kinds of paprika, Megan." I opened the box. My smoked paprika was gone. So was the garam masala I'd driven across town for. So were the little glass jars I'd collected because I liked the sound they made when I opened them. "You threw them out?" I asked. She frowned, like I was the unreasonable one. "I'm cooking for everyone now. I'll keep what we need." I made my coffee in silence, hands tight around the mug, to keep from saying something that would have sounded like, "Get out of my house." It wasn't just the kitchen. Carl set up a few things in the garage, which somehow translated into a full woodworking station. Power tools lined the walls. A table saw crouched in the middle like a mechanical animal. There was sawdust on the floor, on the shelves, on the boxes with my Christmas decorations. On my weights. "Hey, could you maybe put a tarp down or something?" I asked, trying to sound reasonable, not controlling. "My equipment is getting covered." He barely glanced up. "This is what garages are for, kiddo. Projects. You can still lift those things. Little dust never hurt anybody." The living room became their nightly throne room. Carl watched his shows at volume 35, subtitles off, commentary running nonstop. If Daniel and I wanted to watch something, we'd escape to our bedroom, laptop propped between us like we were teenagers hiding from parents instead of adults hiding from his parents. The bathroom situation, a nightmare. Every morning, at precisely 7 o'clock a.m., Linda would occupy the main bathroom for a 45-minute shower. When she was done, the room looked like a beauty supply store had exploded. Hair products, face creams, supplements whose labels I couldn't pronounce. Condensation dripped from the mirror. The hot water tank, defeated, surrendered. I started showering at night like a guest, trying not to inconvenience anyone. The bills crept up. Electric, water, gas. Nothing catastrophic individually, but together it felt like death by 1,000 paper cuts. Every time I opened a statement, my stomach tightened. But the worst part was the boundaries, or what I now know is what happens when people don't believe they apply to them. 3 separate times, Linda walked into our bedroom without knocking. The first time, she was just checking if you need laundry done. My laundry basket was behind the closed door of my closet. The second time, she wanted to see if we liked the new brand of cereal she'd bought. The third time, I was half-dressed, and she did that thing where someone pretends they didn't really see anything by talking louder. "Oh, don't mind me, just grabbing the vacuum." I minded, a lot. "Can you please knock?" I said later, standing in the doorway with my arms crossed. "Our bedroom is our private space." She blinked, hurt already forming in her eyes. "I was just trying to help, Megan." Carl helped himself to my beer, my tools, and, twice, my car. The first time he took my car, I walked into the garage and stared at the empty space where my boring, dependable sedan usually sat. Daniel was in the kitchen. "Where's my car?" I asked. "Oh, Dad borrowed it to run to the hardware store," he said, like I'd asked where the salt was. "He borrowed it," I repeated, without asking me. "He asked me," Daniel said. "We share everything, babe. It's fine." Funny how we always seem to include his parents and not me. 3 weeks ago, I snapped. It was a Tuesday. I work from home most days, my office tucked into the smallest bedroom. I had an important video call with a client from 2 to 4 p.m., the kind of call that affects quarterly numbers, not just my mood. At lunch, I stood in the kitchen and took a breath. "I need quiet from 2 to 4 today," I said. Like actual quiet. No power tools, no blasting TV. I told my client I'd be in a professional environment. Carl snorted. "You work from home. That's not professional." Daniel gave him a look, then turned to me. "We'll keep it down," he promised. "Right, Dad?" Sure, Carl said, waving a hand. At 2:30, right as I was sharing my screen and explaining a workflow, the high-pitched scream of the table saw exploded through the floor. My client flinched visibly on camera. "Is that construction?" Humiliation burned up my neck. "I'm so sorry," I said. "My father-in-law is working in the garage. Give me 1 second." I muted myself, yanked off my headset, and texted Daniel with shaking fingers. "Can you please ask your dad to stop? I'm on that call." He replied 30 seconds later. "He's almost done with his project. Just deal with it." Deal with it. I went back to the call, tried to salvage what I could, and finally had to reschedule. When I closed my laptop, my hands were still trembling. But it wasn't embarrassment anymore. It was rage. I marched downstairs, heart pounding. The table saw shrieked, then whined to a stop as Carl noticed me. "I asked for 2 hours of quiet," I said, shouting over the phantom ringing in my ears. 2. That's it. He didn't even look apologetic. "Relax, kiddo. It's just noise. You're too sensitive." "This is my house. I work here. You made me look unprofessional." Daniel appeared in the doorway from the kitchen, dish towel in his hand, eyes already narrowing. "Don't talk to my father like that." I laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "He's using power tools during my work call, Daniel." "Then go somewhere else," he snapped. "God, you're so controlling about everything." "We've been very patient with your attitude," Linda added from the kitchen, her voice floating in like a draft. "But this is getting ridiculous. We're family. Family makes accommodations." Something in me, something that had been stretched and bent and twisted for 6 months, finally snapped in the other direction. "I want them out," I said, turning fully to Daniel. My voice was too calm. It scared even me. 2 weeks. They find a place and they leave. He actually laughed. "That's not happening," he said. "They've been here 6 months," I said. "That's not temporary. They need to find their own place like they said they would." "No," he said, like he was talking to a child. "They're staying until they're ready to leave. If you can't handle my parents living in our house, then maybe you're not ready for marriage. Maybe we're done." He said it like a trump card, like a threat, like the word done had never been used on him in his life. I looked at him, at his parents hovering behind him in my kitchen, in my doorway, in my life, at the sawdust on my clothes, the empty space where my spices used to be, the faint hum of the bathroom fan that never seemed to be off anymore. "Understood," I said quietly. I went upstairs to my office, closed the door, and this time when my hands shook as I picked up my phone, it wasn't from fear. It was from clarity. I didn't scream. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't storm out. I sat back down at my desk, opened my laptop, and typed, "Free consultation divorce attorney near me." My reflection in the dark part of the screen looked calm. Too calm. My cheeks were a little flushed, eyes too bright, like I'd just stepped outside after being somewhere crowded and loud. I clicked the first listing with decent reviews and dialed. "Law Office of Harrison and Klein," a receptionist answered, efficient and bored. "Hi," I said. I I'd like to speak to someone about a possible divorce and some housing questions. By some miracle, they had a same-day slot for a virtual consultation. 3 p.m. I glanced at the clock on my laptop. It was 2:07. Perfect, I said. Yes, I'll take it. When I hung up, my hands were still shaking. Not from uncertainty, from the realization that I'd skipped the phase where I threatened to leave and gone straight to quietly planning it. Downstairs, I heard the TV click on. Laughter from some daytime show I never watched. Carl's voice boomed about liberals ruining everything. Linda called Daniel Danny and asked if he wanted more pie. 2 hours later, I was on a video call with a woman in a navy blazer and glasses who introduced herself as Claire. Hi, Megan, she said, professional but not cold. Why don't you tell me what's going on? The story spilled out of me faster than I expected. The house, the 6 months, the boundaries, the ultimatum. I heard myself laugh once in the middle of it, a brittle sound when I got to, if you can't handle my parents living in our house, we're done. When I finished, she was quiet for a beat. Okay, she said, and I could tell this wasn't the worst story she'd heard this week. First, let's talk about the house. You said the title is in your name only, and you bought it before the marriage? Yes, I said, 5 years ago. We've been married for 3. Has your husband contributed to the mortgage or any significant improvements? She asked. No, I said. We've always kept finances separate. He pays his car, his credit cards, his stuff. The mortgage has always been mine. Utilities come from my account. She nodded. That's important. Based on what you're telling me, this is likely premarital property. In practical terms, that means it's yours. He doesn't have a claim to half your house just because you're married, despite what pop culture tells people. Something in my chest loosened a little. And his parents, Bab? I asked. They've been here 6 months. They don't pay rent. They never signed anything. Do you have any written agreement? She asked. Email, text, anything that says you can stay for X time? I have a text from Daniel, I said, saying they just need a couple months. Good, she said. Legally, they're guests, not tenants. That means you can remove them with proper notice. In this state, that's typically 30 days. We can draft formal notices that make it clear they need to vacate. If they refuse, it strengthens your case if you have to escalate. I swallowed. So, I can actually ask them to leave, like legally. You can more than ask, she said. You can require it. And as for the marriage, this ultimatum he gave you? If you can't handle my parents living in our house, we're done? I nodded. She shrugged lightly. People say things they don't mean in fights all the time. But when someone sets terms like that, you're allowed to accept them. You're not obligated to live with his parents indefinitely to prove you want the marriage. Her words hit harder than I expected. Allowed to accept them. What would filing look like? I asked. She walked me through it. No children, separate finances, premarital house, clean, on paper, even if it felt like anything but in my chest. She offered to email me a list of documents to gather. Bank statements, mortgage records, utility bills, texts. And if you choose to move forward, she said, we can file and have him served. We can also include documentation of the situation with his parents if they attempt to claim some right to your home. By the time the call ended, I had an email in my inbox and a folder open on my desktop labeled divorce. The word looked surreal next to my spreadsheets. I spent the rest of the afternoon documenting my life. Mortgage statements, screenshots of my bank account, copies of texts where I'd asked for timelines and been brushed off, photos of the garage buried in woodworking equipment, of my spices in a box on the floor. Every new file I dragged into the folder felt like another brick in a wall I hadn't realized I was allowed to build. Daniel knocked once on my office door around 6. He didn't come in. Dinner, he called. Mom made lasagna. I stared at the divorce packet attachment still downloading. Not hungry, I called back. I'm finishing some work. You okay? He asked through the door. I looked at the doorknob, at the thin panel of wood between us. Just tired, I said. Long day. He hesitated. You know I didn't mean it like that earlier, right? The marriage thing. I was just mad. I closed my eyes. But you meant it enough to say it, I thought. Out loud, I said nothing. I listened to his footsteps recede down the hall, Linda's voice fussing over him, Carl barking at something on TV. That night, I lay awake, staring at the faint line of light under the bedroom door. Daniel snored softly beside me. Oblivious, one hand flopped across my side of the bed. I thought about the version of me who would have taken the bait. The one who would have apologized for wanting quiet, for wanting space, for wanting her own house back. The one who would have begged him to take the words back. I didn't miss her. Wednesday, I signed a fee agreement digitally. By Thursday morning, Claire had drafted 2 sets of papers. The first were eviction notices addressed formally to Carl and Linda. 30 days to vacate the property. Legal language about failure to do so, resulting in further action. The second was a divorce petition. Seeing my name at the top as petitioner and his as respondent made my stomach flip. Not in the way it used to when his name popped up on my phone in the early days. This was heavier, final, like typing your resignation letter after months of fantasizing about quitting. I read every line twice, asked a few questions over email, and then e-signed where she told me to. When I hit submit, nothing in the house changed. The table saw still whined occasionally. The TV still blared. The bathroom still steamed at 7 o'clock a.m. But something inside me shifted. A quiet click of a lock I hadn't realized was there. Friday morning, Daniel left for work at his usual time, kissing my forehead on his way out like any other day. "Love you," he said, grabbing his keys from the hook by the door. I managed, my throat suddenly tight. He didn't notice, or maybe he chose not to. He left the house with his lunch in a container his mother had packed, waving at her as she fussed with a dish towel at the sink. The door closed behind him. His car pulled out of the driveway. The house went still. I stood at the top of the stairs for a moment, listening to my own heartbeat in my ears. Then I went back into my office, opened my desk drawer, and took out the 2 envelopes Claire had sent by courier the night before. Their weight in my hands felt disproportionate to the number of pages inside. It felt like I was holding the hinge my life was about to swing on. I walked downstairs. Linda was in the kitchen, rinsing dishes that weren't hers. Carl sat at the table with his ever-present mug of coffee, scrolling through his phone like a king surveying his domain. "I need you both to read these," I said. Carl didn't even look up. "Whatever it is can wait, kiddo. I'm reading something." "No," I said, and my voice surprised all 3 of us. It was steady, firm, not a guest voice, not a kiddo voice. "It can't." I set the envelopes on the table between them, one addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Carlson Green, the other, still in my hand, addressed to Daniel. For the first time in a long time, the kitchen was completely silent. I could hear the clock on the microwave ticking, the refrigerator humming, Linda's breath hitching before she even opened her envelope. Carl reached for his with the impatience of a man absolutely certain the world revolves around him. He didn't stay certain for long. "What the hell is this?" he barked after reading the first line. "Eviction notice," I said. Linda gasped as she scanned the page, her hand flying up to her chest. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious." "You can't evict us," Carl said, pushing back from the table so hard the chair screeched. "Our son lives here. We're family." "You're not tenants," I said. "You were guests, and the guest period is over. You have 30 days from today to vacate the property." Linda's voice sharpened into that high-pitched, glassy shrill she used when she chastised servers in restaurants. "This is cruel. We have nowhere to go." "Then you'll have to find somewhere. You have a month." "We're not leaving," Carl snapped, face turning red. "You don't get to order us around in our own." "This isn't your house," I said, "and legally speaking, it isn't your son's either." His mouth opened and closed like he was chewing on the words. "You can't talk to us like this," Linda cried. "You're being disrespectful." 6 months, I said, voice steady but low. 6 months of disrespect, boundary stomping, ignoring everything I said. If you want to talk about respect, you might want to start with yours. Carl leaned toward me, trying the intimidation tactic he'd used so effectively on Daniel his entire life. "You're making a mistake," he growled. "A big one." I didn't flinch. "There's one more envelope." Linda blinked rapidly. "What envelope?" I set the second one on the table. White, thicker, addressed to Daniel Green. "What's that?" Carl asked, eyes narrowing. "Divorce papers," I said. The room froze. Carl blinked, as if waiting for the punchline. Linda covered her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide and shimmering. "You're divorcing Danny?" she whispered like I'd announced a murder. "He gave me an ultimatum yesterday," I said. "If you can't handle my parents living here, we're done. I'm accepting his terms." Linda gasped, stumbling back like I'd physically shoved her. Carl's face turned from red to purple. "This is insane," he roared. "You're throwing away a marriage because you can't handle a little family living with you?" "A little?" I barked a laugh before I could stop myself. "You've taken over every square inch of this house, and when I asked for basic boundaries, your son told me we were done if I couldn't accept that, so I'm taking him at his word." "You don't get to decide that," Carl yelled. "Actually," I said softly, "I do." He stomped to the front window like he thought staring outside would summon Daniel home through sheer force of outrage. Linda sank into a chair, crying into her hands. "You're heartless," she wailed. "Heartless." "You have 30 days," I repeated, "and I'll be calling a locksmith this afternoon to secure my office and the basement storage. From now on, anything you need to discuss goes through your son or through legal channels." "You're not serious about this," Carl said, desperate now, voice cracking with fury he didn't know how to aim. "You're bluffing. You women with your emotions." I stepped closer. He stepped back. "I don't bluff," I said. He stared at me for a long moment, trying to find the version of me he could push around. The version who stayed quiet. The one who apologized first. The one who thought family meant sacrificing my sanity. That version of me was dead. By the time the locksmith arrived at 3 that afternoon, the tension in the house was thick enough to chew. The man installed new locks on my office, the basement storage room, and the garage interior door, while Carl stormed around making phone calls and huffing loudly about rights and lawsuits. Linda alternated between crying and muttering to herself. Around 3:20 p.m., the front door camera chimed. Daniel was home early. He marched up to the door, confused to find it locked, then pounded on it like he expected the wood to give way out of respect for him. "Meg," he shouted, "why is the door locked?" Linda rushed over, still clutching the eviction notice, tears streaking her face. "Danny, she's losing her mind. She's throwing us out. She's—" "Hang on," Daniel said, pressing the doorbell again. I walked to the hallway, inhaled, and tapped the button on the app. "Daniel," I said through the speaker, "check inside the envelope addressed to you." He froze, his hand still on the doorknob. "What envelope?" "The one on the table." I watched on the camera as he picked it up with trembling fingers. His eyes darted across the first page. They widened, then narrowed, then widened again. What is this?" he asked, voice thin. "Divorce papers," I said. "You gave me an ultimatum. I'm accepting it." "Megan, come on," he said, slamming his palm against the door. "You're not actually doing this. We were just talking." "No," I said. "You were threatening." I listened. His parents hovered behind him, each adding their own flavor of meltdown. "This is illegal," Carl shouted. "This is cruel," Linda sobbed. "This is the consequence of your words," I replied. "Meg, please, just let's talk," Daniel begged. "We have nothing left to talk about," I said calmly. "Everything goes through attorneys now." He paced the porch like a caged animal. "Where am I supposed to go?" "You can go with your parents," I said, "or to a motel, or find your own apartment. You're not coming back in here." His voice cracked. "You're really choosing this? Over my family?" "No," I said. "I'm choosing myself. Something you didn't think I would ever do." He slammed his fist into the door again. "I didn't mean it like that." "You said it," I replied. "And believe me, this 6-month nightmare showed me exactly what you meant." "Meg, don't do this. Please don't do this." "Goodbye, Daniel." I tapped the disconnect button. He stared at the Ring camera like he expected it to apologize. His parents shouted. He shouted back. Suitcases appeared. More yelling. More threats. At one point, Carl tried to argue with my neighbor, who simply shrugged and said, "It's her house, man." Eventually, all 3 of them trudged to the car. Daniel looked back once, eyes red and bewildered. I watched them drive away. Then I locked the app, locked the door, and for the first time in half a year, the house was silent. Not peaceful yet, but quiet. I didn't expect the next 72 hours to feel like a siege, but that's exactly what it became. The first knock came the very next morning, sharp, insistent, impatient. I checked the camera. Carl and Linda stood on my porch, staring directly into the lens like they could intimidate a piece of plastic. Carl jabbed the doorbell. "Megan," he barked, "open up." I tapped the audio button. "You have 30 days' notice. There's nothing to discuss." "You can't lock us out of our own son's house," he yelled, spit flying. "This isn't your house," I said, "and it isn't Daniel's. I'm not repeating myself." Linda stepped forward, clutching her purse like she was about to faint. "We have rights," she shrilled. "Not tenants' rights," I corrected. "You never signed a lease. You were guests. Guests can be asked to leave." Carl pounded on the door with the side of his fist. "Let us in, or we're calling the cops." "Go ahead," I said. "I'll show them the eviction notices your lawyer signed for." His face changed, quickly, subtly, a flicker of doubt, then rage again. "You'll regret this," he roared. I ended the connection. They stayed another 15 minutes, shouting, trying to peer through windows, walking around to the side gate, which I'd locked, and attempting to rattle it open. Eventually, they left. It wasn't the last time. On Tuesday morning, they returned. This time, for 20 straight minutes, Carl hammered the doorbell like he was trying to break the button. I called the non-emergency police line. "My in-laws were served formal eviction notices," I told the dispatcher. "They are now trespassing and harassing me." 2 officers arrived within 10 minutes. They reviewed the documents at my door, then walked to the driveway where Carl and Linda were still shouting about how I was destroying their family. One officer said, "Sir, ma'am, you need to leave." Carl puffed up like a furious pigeon. "This is our family home." The officer glanced back at the papers in his hand. "The title is not in your name. You've been given legal notice. If you continue to come here without invitation, you can be arrested for trespassing." Linda began crying, loudly, dramatically, in that way that makes passers-by look out their windows. "We have nowhere to go." "You have 23 days left on your notice," the officer said flatly. "You are not homeless, but you cannot harass the homeowner." They left again, but not quietly. Carl shouted over his shoulder, "This isn't over!" The officer muttered, "Please let it be over," under his breath as he walked back to his patrol car. Wednesday brought Daniel, not at the house. He had learned that wasn't going to work, but at my job. He waited in the parking lot near my car, shifting awkwardly from foot to foot like a kid waiting outside the principal's office. "Megan," he said when I approached, his voice cracking. I didn't smile. "I told you, everything goes through the lawyers." "Please," he whispered, "just 5 minutes. I won't yell. I need to say something." Against my better judgment, I stopped. "5 minutes," I said. He swallowed hard. "This is insane. You're ending our marriage because my parents needed help." I stared at him. "No. I'm ending it because you gave me an ultimatum." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I was upset. I didn't mean we should actually get divorced." "Then you shouldn't have said it." I was frustrated, he insisted. "Daniel," I said quietly, "you gave me a choice. You just never believed I'd take it." His mouth opened, then closed. He tried again. "My parents have nowhere else to go." "That isn't my problem," I said. "They've had 6 months to figure it out." "Where are they supposed to live?" he demanded. "Anywhere but my house." "You're being heartless." I lifted an eyebrow. "Am I? Or were you being heartless when you told me that if I wanted your parents to leave, our marriage was over?" He deflated. "I love you," he said suddenly. "I don't want a divorce. I'll tell them to leave. They can find an apartment. Just stop all this." "No," I said simply. Tears filled his eyes. "Why not? I'm trying to fix it." "Because you showed me who you are," I said. "And I believe you." He reached out, trying to touch my arm. "Please." I stepped back. "Your 5 minutes are up. Don't come to my work again." I walked away without looking back. On Thursday, Daniel's mother escalated the situation. She created a group chat with my family, my parents, my sister, even my aunt in Minnesota, and sent a long, dramatic message about how I had thrown out her family and was destroying her son. My phone buzzed with messages as the group blew up. My mom called immediately. "What is happening over there?" she asked. I walked her through everything. The 6 months, the boundaries, the ultimatum, the divorce. She was silent for a full 5 seconds, then said, "Good for you." Relief washed through me so suddenly I had to sit down. My sister chimed into the group chat. "Maybe don't live rent-free in someone's house for half a year, then act shocked when they say time's up. Just a thought." Linda tried to clap back. My aunt, my quiet, church-going, never sweatpants aunt, replied, "You're not getting sympathy here. Find your own place to live." They went silent after that. But Carl wasn't done. Friday morning, he called my office, my actual company line, and berated me for 5 full minutes before I told the receptionist to block his number. "We need to talk man to man," he snarled. "I'm not a man," I said, "and we don't need to talk at all." "You're breaking up a family over nothing." "Over 6 months of entitlement and an ultimatum," I corrected. Big difference. "You'll regret this," he spat. "The only thing I regret," I said, "is not doing it sooner." I hung up. Blocked him. Went to lunch with coworkers for the first time in months. That night, around 9 p.m., an unknown number called. I ignored it. Then it called again. And again. Finally, I answered. "Megan," Daniel's voice said, "baby, please." I closed my eyes. "I'm at a motel," he continued, voice shaky. "My parents are at another one. We're miserable. Just let us come home." "That's not your home anymore," I said. "I'm your husband." "No," I said softly. "You're my soon-to-be ex-husband." "Megan," he started crying. Actual, desperate crying. "I made a mistake. I should have set boundaries. I should have stopped them. I see it now. Please, we can fix this, please." "Daniel," I said, "you didn't make one mistake. You made 6 months of them." He sobbed harder. "I love you." "Then you should have acted like it before you threatened me." "Please don't hang up," he begged. "Don't." I hung up. Blocked that number too. The motel voicemail he left after that was 5 minutes long and mostly unintelligible. By the time I put my phone down, the house felt different. Still quiet. Still mine. But for the first time in months, it felt like the beginning of something instead of the middle of something awful. 3 weeks after I accepted Daniel's ultimatum, the real battle began. Not the emotional one, though that was messy enough, but the legal one. The one where his parents' entitlement evolved into something almost operatic in its intensity. If they'd had access to a stage and spotlights, Linda would have taken a bow after every meltdown. The first official shot fired came from his lawyer. A different number this time, but the same tone I'd grown used to, someone assuming they could talk me out of my own decisions. "Ms. Calloway?" a man asked when I answered. "This is Attorney Jeffries. I represent your husband, Daniel Green. My client would like to discuss reconciliation." "No reconciliation," I said instantly. "I understand this feels sudden." "It's been 6 months coming," I cut in, and he set the terms. I'm simply honoring them. There was a pause. "Well, my client believes this was a misunderstanding." "Great," I said calmly. "He can explain that to a judge." He exhaled. "Miss Calloway, I urge you to reconsider. Divorce is—" I hung up. Sent Claire a quick email. Update: opposing counsel tried emotional manipulation through lawyer voice. Unsuccessful. She responded in under 5 minutes. Proud. His parents didn't take long to make their next move. Monday morning, they ambushed me at my new coffee shop. I'd found it after being essentially chased out of my old one by their sudden habit of accidentally showing up there. This place was quieter, with mismatched mugs and baristas who played soft indie music instead of pop. I adored it. At 7:40 a.m., I was third in line when I heard a familiar, piercing voice behind me. "You should be ashamed of yourself." I stiffened. "Linda." And Carl. "Perfect." I didn't turn around. "This is harassment. Leave me alone." Linda stepped closer, loudly enough for the entire shop to hear. "You are breaking our son. Do you even care?" "Your son broke our marriage," I said. I just accepted the consequences he set. Carl jabbed a finger toward my face. "You will give him what he deserves." I slowly turned and stared at his finger until he dropped it. "He deserves exactly what he threatened me with," I said. "A divorce." People in the cafe were now openly watching. A barista froze mid-latte. Linda's voice rose, shaky, indignant, full of fury that didn't belong in public spaces. "You think you can throw away family like garbage?" I stepped back, grabbing my purse strap. "You aren't my family." She gasped like I'd slapped her. Carl took a threatening half-step forward. "You think we're just going to roll over? We fed you. We helped around the house." "I didn't ask for help," I said. "I asked for respect." "You are too sensitive," he thundered. "And you are done speaking to me," I said, turning on my heel. I left without my coffee. I reported them to the manager. They were banned from the cafe. Small victories. Wednesday brought escalation. I came home after work to find my side gate broken open, a hinge torn loose, a footprint in the dirt. The security camera at the back caught everything. Carl climbing over the fence, forcing his way in, heading straight for the garage like he owned it. I called the police. When 2 officers arrived, I showed them the footage. "Clear trespassing," one said. They drove to the motel where Carl and Linda were staying and issued a formal warning. When Carl tried arguing about his tools, the officer shut him down. "Sir, the property inside the garage belongs to the homeowner unless documented otherwise. You do not have entry rights." Carl apparently ranted for 15 minutes before they threatened to cite him. He called me that night. He didn't yell this time. He hissed. "I'm coming to get my tools." "No," I said. "You can collect them on day 30 with 24 hours written notice, legally." "They're mine." "Then you should have taken them when you left." "This is theft." "No, this is you refusing to follow the law." "You are vindictive." "And you are blocked." Click. The temporary support hearing came next. I wasn't worried, but I wasn't prepared for just how bold Daniel and his lawyer would be. The courtroom was small, neutral walls, fluorescent lights too bright for faces already strained by conflict. Daniel sat at one table looking like a kicked puppy. His lawyer sat next to him looking like he'd just smoked confidence straight out of a bottle. Claire and I sat across from them, calm, collected. The judge entered. We rose, sat again. Daniel's lawyer launched into his opening with theatrical sadness. "Your Honor, my client's wife has abandoned the marital home and left him financially stranded." I blinked. Claire smirked. "He was forced into temporary housing and has no support," he continued. "We ask for temporary spousal support of—" I nearly choked. $3,000 a month, he said solemnly, plus access to half the home's equity. The judge raised an eyebrow. "This home was acquired before the marriage?" "Yes, Your Honor. However—" Claire stood. "Your Honor, we have mortgage statements showing Ms. Calloway purchased the property solely in her name 5 years prior to the marriage. All payments have always come from her account. Their finances were separate throughout the marriage. Additionally, Mr. Green has full-time income of his own. She handed over documents. The judge flipped through them, slow, methodical, then looked up. I see no evidence of financial dependence, he said. Request for temporary support is denied. Daniel's lawyer sputtered. But Your Honor. Denied, the judge repeated, already moving to the next page. And the house is premarital property, no division of equity. Daniel's face crumpled. His lawyer looked like someone had yanked the rug out from under his ego. Outside the courthouse, the real show began. Linda barreled toward me like a screaming comet. You stole from us, she shrieked. My lawyer stepped between us so fast it was almost elegant. Ma'am, you need to step back. Carl jabbed a finger at me. You ruined our lives. You ruined my peace first, I said. I'm simply cleaning up. Linda lunged. Actually lunged. Security grabbed her within seconds and escorted her and Carl off the property. Daniel just stood there, sweaty and pale. His mascara-streaked mother shouting over her shoulder, You'll pay for this! No, I murmured. You already are. 2 days later, someone egged my house. 4 eggs, 2 on the porch, 2 on the garage door. Guess who did it? Security camera footage showed Linda leaning out of her car window at 2:04 a.m., hurling eggs with disturbing accuracy. I filed another police report. She got a $500 vandalism citation. Carl called to scream, You bankrupt us with your cruelty. I said, Maybe stop committing crimes, Carl. This is your fault. I laughed. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Click. By week 4 of legal war, the eviction deadline was approaching. They hadn't moved a single thing. Carl's tools still cluttered my garage. Linda's gadgets still clogged my kitchen. I sent a certified letter through my attorney. 72 hours to remove belongings or they will be considered abandoned. They responded by showing up with a lawyer in tow. His parents, their lawyer, my lawyer, all standing in my driveway like a terrible sitcom crossover. They need more time, their lawyer insisted. They had 30 days, Claire said. They're on day 29. They're elderly, he argued. They're 58 and 60, Claire replied. They can hire movers. This is unreasonable, the lawyer snapped. What's unreasonable, Claire said pleasantly, is taking over a home for half a year, refusing to pay rent, ignoring all boundaries, and then acting shocked when consequences arrive. Carl sputtered. We're family. No, Claire said with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. You are trespassers with an expiring deadline. The movers came the next morning. 2 young guys who looked like they'd never wanted a job less in their entire lives. Carl muttered darkly the entire time. Linda cried loudly enough for the whole street to hear. Every time a drawer opened, she wailed like she was witnessing a funeral. At one point, she screamed, This woman is stealing everything from us. One mover whispered to the other, Dude, I just want my paycheck. When the last box left the house, Carl stood in my driveway, breathing heavily like he'd run a marathon fueled exclusively by rage and entitlement. You're going to regret this, he said. I met his eyes. Only regret, I said quietly, is not doing it sooner. He spat on my driveway. Then they left. And just like that, the house finally exhaled. 8 weeks after Daniel's ultimatum detonated our marriage, the final hearing arrived, the one that would decide the last loose ends, the one that, on paper, would end everything. What no one tells you is that things usually end long before the paperwork catches up. The courthouse was colder than it needed to be. Fluorescent, humming, impersonal. Perfect backdrop for the official end of something that had already quietly died. Daniel sat at the opposite table, shoulders slumped, suit wrinkled, eyes dull. He looked smaller, not physically, just diminished, like all the bluster and righteousness had drained out of him. Linda and Carl weren't there. Probably couldn't afford to miss work again. Or maybe they were too embarrassed after being removed from the courthouse the last time. Either way, it was blessedly quiet. The judge reviewed everything with a level of detachment I envied. Financial records, property documents, the timeline of the eviction notices, the police reports, the incident with the gate, the vandalism, the attempt at temporary support. Finally, he set the folder down. The house, he said, is clearly premarital property in the petitioner's name. No claim can be made against it. Daniel's lawyer tried, feebly. Your Honor, we'd like to argue that the marital standard of The judge cut him off mid-sentence. This property was acquired before the marriage. Mr. Green did not contribute financially to the mortgage or improvements. Motion denied. Daniel's jaw clenched. I felt nothing. The judge continued, There will be no alimony, no division of assets. Each party retains their personal property and bank accounts. Simple, dry, final. Divorce is granted. A dull echo settled in my chest. Not painful, not relief, exactly. More like the feeling after walking out of a loud concert, disoriented, quiet, empty space where noise used to be. The gavel tapped. It was over. Outside the courthouse, Daniel lingered by the steps. I considered walking right past him, but he stepped into my path. "I hope you're happy," he said, voice raw. I adjusted my purse strap. "I'm getting there." He laughed a bitter, hollow sound. "Do you know where I'm living now?" "No," I said, "and I don't care." "A studio," he spat. "I can barely afford it. You have a full-time job." His eyes were sharp with resentment. "My parents are living in a one-bedroom, on an air mattress, because of you." "No," I said calmly, "because of their choices, and yours." He stared at me like he couldn't recognize the woman in front of him. "You can really be this cold?" he whispered. "You told me the marriage was over if I couldn't accept your parents living in my house indefinitely," I said. "You made a choice. Now you're living in the consequences." "Just one mistake," he said. "One." I shook my head. "No, one ultimatum. 6 months of mistakes." His eyes filled with tears. "I loved you." "Past tense," I said softly. "Noted." He flinched. For a second, he looked like he might say something else, something cruel or desperate or nostalgic. But the moment passed. He turned, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, and walked toward the parking lot where a dented sedan, definitely not his old car, waited. He didn't look back. I didn't either. The aftermath came in pieces. Not dramatic ones. Not cinematic ones. Small, quiet ones that rearranged my life back into something resembling mine. My mom came over the next weekend with paint samples. Soft greens, warm whites, a muted blue I secretly loved. "Let's erase the garage first," she said, rolling up her sleeves. Sawdust vacuumed up. Table saw scratches sanded out. Carl's hulking projects area replaced with a clean, empty corner. My sister helped me redecorate the living room. We moved furniture, added plants, replaced the throw pillows Linda insisted were too cold looking. We opened the windows and let fresh air in. The house felt bigger, airier, like it finally remembered what it was without all the noise. Neighbors stopped me on walks. Word travels fast in suburbs. One said, "Glad you stood your ground." I heard them shouting through the walls sometimes. Another said, "Good for you. Boundaries matter." One older man across the street nodded and said simply, "Peace is priceless." He wasn't wrong. Daniel's friends mostly disappeared. The ones who'd believed his mother's dramatic version of events stopped posting cryptic sympathy messages online after court documents became public. Rumor had it Linda and Carl were fighting constantly in their cramped one-bedroom. Carl's retirement turned out to be termination after multiple conflicts with management. Their savings were almost gone. Daniel was exhausted, working extra hours, frustrated at how expensive living alone is when you're not freeloading off someone else's mortgage. Sometimes I'd hear through mutual acquaintances that he missed me, that he regretted everything, that he wished he hadn't said the words that cost him his marriage. But regret isn't a time machine. It's a mirror, and the reflection isn't always kind. As for me, I got my life back. My routines. My mornings without someone criticizing the way I loaded a dishwasher. My evenings without a TV blasting at jet engine volume. My garage without sawdust storms. My kitchen with spices exactly where I put them. My home. Mine. People ask me now, "Do you regret it, ending things so fast?" I tell them the truth. I didn't end the marriage. Daniel did, 6 months ago, in a kitchen full of dirty dishes and entitlement, when he said, "If you can't handle my parents living here, we're done." I just gave him what he asked for. And then I gave myself something I should have given myself much sooner. Peace. And I'm not losing it again.